In the past, when I've made night flights, it's always been to airports that I've been to previously during the daytime, giving me a chance to scope out the airport terrain, obstructions, and other conditions. So I wondered what it would take to make an approach, landing and takeoff at night to an unfamiliar airport. So actually I picked Auburn, which is very close, but coincidentally somewhere that I've never been before. And actually, I don't usually fly the valley. I normally do the SeaTac transition and fly over the water. So I haven't even seen Auburn from the air during the day before. So I'm somewhat familiar in a conceptual sense with where it is, but I've never been there during the day. And it's pretty close. So I said, okay, I'm going to plan an approach to this at night. So the first thing I want to do is look at the sectional chart. And I'm looking for the not just the information about the airport itself, but also the information for what's around it, such as terrain and obstructions. You can see that I've circled to the southwest of the field. There's a tower starting at 270 feet on the ground, going up to 700 feet about MSL. To the northeast and southeast, we have some terrain up to 250 feet. The airport itself is only at 63 feet. So the airport we see there from the chart is in a valley beneath the surrounding terrain. And the surrounding terrain, we'll say it's up to about 300 feet. We'll do an estimate. 300-foot terrain, almost a sea level elevation airport, so we can still make a normal pattern. We just have to be aware that there's going to be some terrain. Some of that terrain isn't highlighted in yellow, which means it will be dark or could be dark. Additionally, looking at the airport information on the sectional, of course we want to make sure that it does have lights. We want to make sure the runway is long enough, all the usual stuff you would check. Noticing a right pattern to runway 16, so I've drawn an approximate kind of traffic pattern on the map as well. And what that's telling me is that patterns are going to be over the freeway, which is nice, so that'll be an easy marker, easy visual marker for making the pattern. And all the patterns are going to be to the west of the airport. The other thing we want to look at is airspace. So this is an uncontrolled Class E airspace, but look around. Lots of Bravo, including some Bravo all the way down to the surface, just a little bit to the northwest. So we cannot venture to the northwest. You know, sometimes at an airport like this, I might, let's say we're making an approach to 3-4, which was the circumstance that's coming up. I might go actually quite northwest of the field and do a 45 to the downwind. Now, if I do that here and I'm not paying attention, it could easily stray into that surface Bravo airspace. Directly to the west, the Bravo airspace is down to 1,800 feet, so I want to make sure that I'm below that, both for the approach, which of course will happen, but also after takeoff. I don't want to just say, oh, I'm going to take off and I'll depart to the west and off we go and climb, climb, climb. So those are the kind of things that night can be a little busier. There's a lot to do, and you just want to have that all planned out in advance. And the next thing I want to look at is going to be the AFD entry for the airport. So in this case, in addition to all the usual stuff that we know to look for, traffic pattern, communications, etc., I'm looking for things that are related to lighting and obstructions. So I know that I'm making an approach to runway 34. I already knew that because of I checked the weather. And so I see here that there's a VASI system, which is indicated both in the description of the runway and also on the diagram. As a personal aside, as a limit for me, I will not make an approach at night to an airport with an inoperative or missing approach slope system, visual approach slope. So whether that's a VASI or a PAPI or whatever. So that's a limitation that I put on myself. Certainly I've done it before, done it with an instructor, but it's just not something I would choose to do. Other things I'm looking for obstructions, there's a runway 16 has some obstructions, and the other thing is how to turn the lights on. Are the lights always on? Do I have to turn them on? It's just important to know. So here we see that the approach slope lights are always on, but the in lights and the edge lights are activated via the CTAF, which is common. In order to make sure the lights are actually on and usable, I want to check the NOTAMs. This will also let me know if there's any unlit towers or other night-specific concerns. Finally, I want to check internet forums or websites to look for any other specific information. Often local pilots are well aware and have their own procedures that they've created, or sometimes the owner of the airport or manager has posted some procedures, and that's always good information to know about. So I start off heading up I-5 from the south at 1,500 feet. That keeps me below the 1,800-foot Bravo ceiling. And my plan is I'm looking for kind of there's that fork in the road here where another big freeway goes off to the east. And at night, the big freeways are very, very visible usually. So after that, I just need to be prepared to not keep going north too far, so I don't want to punch into the Bravo to the surface, and then I'm going to make kind of a right turn onto a midfield right down, or excuse me, left downwind, midfield left downwind for 3-4 at Auburn. When I fly at night, I usually do a little bit of a longer final because I want to not descend very much, especially if I'm unsure of terrain, until I've acquired the visual approach slope, which I know will protect me. The flip side of that rule, which is also something I try to always follow, is that until I'm right there at the threshold, unless I'm very, very familiar, I do not descend beneath the visual glide slope because I don't know. The glide slope is there to protect us from obstacles, and I don't know what's in that dark space before the runway or elsewhere on that approach below the glide slope. I don't know if there's trees, if there's a fence, if there's a building, and I find even though it causes the landing to compared to a day landing feel like it's a bit of a long landing, it's well worth the safety to follow that visual glide slope pretty religiously. Night takeoffs are a time to review and make sure you're on board with the noise abatement procedure at the airport that you're at. In this particular airport at Auburn, the AFD is quite clear that the area east of the airport it says, quote, extremely noise sensitive. So if an area is extremely noise sensitive during the day, it's probably a lot more noise sensitive at night. People are complaining about having their houses overflown by aircraft during the day. They're going to be even more upset if they're trying to get into evening, if they're either going to bed or getting their kids to bed or trying to maybe watch a show, and there's noisy airplanes overflying. So especially at night, I try to double down on the noise abatement procedures. The other thing is you can do a fairly steep climb to your altitude and then reduce power. Again, at this point, the other thing I have to watch for here is airspace, and not just to. At first, I need to kind of make a tight left turn to avoid the lower Bravo airspace, and then also I don't want to climb too much. I don't want to punch into it. And by the way, if you do most of your night flying in the city, I recommend you occasionally head out to an airport like Bremerton, shown here, or maybe Shelton, and just get an entirely different kind of experience coming into an airport that's in a very dark area.